Never has there been such positive publicity about any sector in the agriculture industry as there is about the organic sector at present. Organically produced food is being endorsed by celebrity chefs and food writers on a daily basis. Many farmers consider themselves to be almost organic, that is, using little or no artificial fertilizers. The reality is there is no such production system as almost organic. However, when a farmer is using little or no fertilizer, the transition to organic farming systems is made a little easier. But no artificial fertilizer inputs is only one of the boxes which must be ticked to satisfy organic standards. Organic farming means farming to a defined set of standards, which follows the principles of organic farming and ensures the integrity of the organic brand is maintained. The basic principles of organic farming are based on maintenance and enhancement of natural soil fertility, the minimum use of non-renewable resources and off-farm inputs, the efficient recycling of animal manures, the maintenance of animal health, and the observance of a high level of livestock welfare. There is a perception that organic farming is difficult, contains a lot of red tape, demanding on labour, and only returns low levels of productivity. The reality is different. The best organic farmers, using good husbandry and management skills, can achieve stocking rates up to 1.8 livestock units per hectare. Remember, a good conventional farmer will make a good organic farmer. This DVD features organic farmers across the country who have successfully made the switch to organic farming.
I went into organic farming in 1999 and became fully certified in July 2001. My two main enterprises are cereal farming and beef farming. The cereal enterprise comprises winter corn only, no spring corn at all, and is predominantly oats for the porridge market and wheat then for animal feed. The rotation for the cereal enterprise is 3 years cereals and 2 years red clover. The red clover is putting the nitrogen into the soil for the following 3 years of cereals. This is all designed to take care of soil fertility, which is a critical thing in growing organic cereals successfully. You've got to build up the nitrogen for the cereal crops in the 2 years that you spend growing red clover, and then every year the soil will also get a dressing of about 20 tonnes per hectare of farmyard manure. So you can see this crop here, which was sown at the beginning of October. It's a very healthy green colour and a very good strike of seed, and in fact that's all my own seed, which was from last year's harvest. You can see small amounts of small weeds coming through. That's mainly chickweed, I think. But the crop is so far ahead of it at this stage that those weeds will be no problem. And also the crop is sown quite thick, which is also an important factor in weed control. What we're also looking at is to have biological life in that soil. When I was a conventional farmer, the materials that I was using were killing the life in that soil. So when you come into organic cereal farming, you really must look at what the biological life is like in the soil and take action to try and improve on that. So in my hands here, there are billions of organisms, all playing their own role in making this a fertile soil. And it's an area that I know very little about, but it is a fascinating area, and if you can get the biology of the soil correct, that soil will grow a healthy crop, give you a very good return, and will protect the crop from disease. So after the crop has been sown, it's not rolled or anything, there's no more done to it. And really the next operation is going into combine at the end of July, beginning of August. The only thing that you might have to do if you had a weed problem would be, if it was a minor weed problem, you might actually have to go in there and pull some weeds. And I have done that. It's a lot of work, but if you have to do it, you have to do it. One thing that you want to avoid in organic cereals growing is you want to avoid spreading weeds. So if you have a very dirty crop and you go in and harvest that with the combine in the ordinary way, you're going to spread a lot of those weed seeds. So if your crop is bad enough, you actually might have to consider doing whole crop silage maybe a month before it's ripe, and gather all those weed seeds in there, put them into the silage, put them through the animals, into the dung, and compost all that dung to kill all the weed seeds. That's the theory of how you do it. But otherwise you might, if there's a small infestation of, let's say, docks or wild oats, you actually go out and pull them. It's not negotiable as regards how you deal with weeds. You just have to deal with them. If you go out and combine them and spread them out in the field again, then you can reach a stage where that field will no longer be suitable for cereal farming. There are mechanical ways that you can control weeds. I haven't had to use them on this farm yet, but they can be done, and some of them are quite successful. Some of my friends think that I'm still on my honeymoon as regards the absence of weeds in my crops, but it's a long honeymoon and I'm certainly enjoying it. My two main enterprises are organic beef production and organic cereal production. The beef production is mainly based on buying in store cattle from other farmers and finishing them in the winter time. You could be cereal only, but it's not as simple at all as if you have the two enterprises mixed, because basically what you want to grow the cereals successfully is very good soil fertility. So if you have animal manure to go on to the soil where you're growing the cereals, that really makes soil fertility very, very simple to achieve. Whereas if you're entirely in cereals with no livestock, you would have to have some green manure crops every 4 or 5 years and plough them back into the soil. But it can be done. When the animals leave the sheds here in the month of April and May, I turn the dung inside in those sheds 3 or 4 times during the summertime in order to decompose the dung as much as possible, so that it is in a very usable state when we spread it on the land in the autumn time, but also to increase the temperature in the dung to kill any weed seeds that there might be in there. So you're looking at getting this dung up to a temperature of 65 or 70 degrees. That temperature will kill whatever weed seeds are there. There's nothing new in organic farming at all, but with the benefit of science nowadays, we're beginning to understand why our ancestors undertook the farming practices that they had. So we're actually having to learn what they already knew, because for the last 50 years all of that information died with those people and is in our local cemeteries all over the country. So we're having to reinvent organic farming, but it is not new. So they did a lot of the practices that we're now doing in terms of getting the soil right, in terms of proper crop rotation, and even in terms of getting the biological activity in the soil, getting that well. They also had practices that they didn't know the science of it, but it worked. Back in 1999, when I went into organic farming, my main reason was to make more money. I could see that there was a market there for these products and there was a premium there from the marketplace. Now that premium can go up or down depending on supply or demand. But in addition to some extra premium, I actually enjoy organic farming much better than I did conventional farming, because I'm working with the soil. I'm feeding the soil rather than feeding the crop. And if you feed the soil will give you a very good return. It will have, by and large, disease-free crops, weed-free crops, but you have to pay attention to detail, and if you do all that, it certainly will give you a great return. And I'm very happy that I changed over to organic farming, and that's the way I see my future.
Well, my name is Trevor Harris, and the farming I do is a mixture of sheep, cattle and tillage, all done organically. The farm would be divided up, about 50% would be in grassland and about 50% would be in tillage crops at any one time. I do an 8-year rotation, 4 years in grass clover lay, and 4 years in tillage crops. The reason I choose the grass clover is the clover is building the nitrogen up during those 4 years, and the grazing animals are also building up the nutrients. Then I'd go into the first year, I'd have either wheat or triticale, as they'll use the nutrients that are there to the best. I had tried growing oats as a first crop before, but there was too much nutrients there and it didn't do well. It ended up in trouble with mildew. Then the second crop I'd grow would usually be oats. Then I'd go into peas and then back into oats again. I find that rotation works quite well. It suits me quite well because I'd have more oats in the rotation. I'd actually grow more oats than that, but there's problems with disease, and you have to avoid that, obviously. We can deal with the disease in the organic farms to a certain extent through rotation, but other than that, we don't have much ways of dealing with it. We'd have a little less disease pressure as a result of the fact that we're growing crops organically and we're not pushing them with nitrogen. We're selling our crops for a little bit more, the added value, and the fact that we don't have the same overheads, that at the end of the day we'd end up in a more profitable situation. As a cereal farmer, the cattle would be very critical to the system in the sense that they're producing nutrients that I can spread to any one field each year in the form of dung or in the form of slurry. So I can take those nutrients. If there's a field that's short on nutrients, I can concentrate them on that particular field. I have to say I do actually like having sheep around the place, but I toy with the idea of selling them all every now and then. They help establish the grass. When I'm establishing grass, they graze it in such a way that it helps it establish. It means that I can rotate the grass between the cattle and the sheep, and that helps with the worm burden in the cattle. A question a lot of tillage farmers would have with growing crops organically, the first thing I'd say a lot of them would think of is weed control. The first method would be rotation. Obviously, I'd be going into grass clover lay. Coming out of grass clover lay, you would have less seeds in the soil. I'd sow winter crops, and I'd sow varieties that would grow to a fairly tall height. That's partially why I grow the triticale and the oats. The two of them would do quite well because they grow so tall. It's not usually an issue with the organic crops because they don't have the same nitrogen pushed onto them as the conventional crops. I'd be looking for the crops to grow tall and thick so that they shade out any weeds that are below them. The other way I control weeds is I have a mechanical weeder, and the way the mechanical weeder works is I sow the crop on wide rows. I block every second coulter on the seeder when I'm sowing the crop. It has a duck's foot on the bottom of a spring tine, and there's a camera on the machine that's connected to a computer in the cab. It makes the hydraulics of the tractor shift the machine from one side to the other side, and it follows the crop down the field. I'd only use the mechanical weeder on some of the fields, depending on the weed burden. The fields that are sown for spring crops would tend to need it. I tend to have to use it on the field sown for spring crops. As far as yield is concerned, in most of the crops, you'd be looking at about half what you'd expect for a conventional crop. So you can either go above the half or below it. This crop in particular now, I wouldn't have seen as being, I'd be quite disappointed with it. It yielded badly, and that was partially because it was sown late in the spring and the wrong variety choice. I wouldn't grow this variety again. That just goes to show that there is pitfalls as well, and you have to have the right variety choice. You have to have the right weather, the same as the ordinary conventional farming. We all work under the same conditions. This year I would have gotten approximately 3 times the price conventional farmers were getting for their cereals. So at the end of the day, per acre, I'd see that I'd be making more money. The biggest challenge with the animals is the marketing end of it, to get them away and to get your profit out of them. The biggest challenge with the tillage end of it is fertility and weeds, and once you can get that right, you'll fly. You know, the marketing at the tillage end is the easy part. I soil sample regularly so that I know exactly what way each field is performing and what it can do, what crop it can support, and what it will need to feed that crop. The reason I got into organic farming in the first place, it was something that I was interested in for quite a length of time. It was something I would always lent towards, but the main reason I got into it was profitability. I saw the amount of money that was going out on fertilisers and sprays, and I looked into the organic farming thing, and I thought I'd try a small amount of the land in organic farming, which I did at first, and it worked. It worked out well, and the profitability has been good. Don't be afraid of it is another thing I'd advise you, because it's not quite as difficult as you might think, and it is possible to do it. Organic farming, I have to say, I'm glad I made the decision to go as an organic farmer, and I'm happy with the lifestyle. I've a wife and 5 kids, and the organic farm is supporting them all. So I'm happy with my lot. I'm happy with my organic farming, and I'm glad I made the decision to go that way.
I'm farming almost 90 acres here, 88 acres, and it's all in grass, bar 1 or 2 fields that I have in tillage each year, either through arable silage or grown grain. I try and produce as much of my beef as I can, either through grass grazing or feeding silage, good quality silage in the shed. This is my winter accommodation for the dry cattle. It's a straw bedded shed. I don't have any effluent tank on the outside of the door. I have no actual slats along the feeding barrier, so it's all bedded. We bed it with a straw chopper, drive along there and blow the straw in across the cattle here. I have 4 pins. You can see the marks on the wall there where the bedding builds up to. And the gates, I can adjust the height of the gates as the bedding is rising. Cattle feed through a barrier along here, and when they come up level with it, I have to take out the manure, but usually does 3 or 4 months. There is definitely more work with straw bedding compared to a slatted house. Definitely, you feed in a slatted house very quickly, and putting out slurry is very quick. Whereas we have to bed every week, at least twice a week with straw, and we have the machine for bedding the straw, blowing it in, but it takes a few hours every 3rd or 4th day, and also you have the work then of spreading the farmyard manure. But the plus side of it is that you have all this extra fertility. I don't have a composting machine as such, so I use this back-end spreader to put the farmyard manure into. I spread it in a pile out of the machine, and what it does is it chops it up, but it also gets lots of air through it to make oxygen, to help break it down, to speed up the breakdown process. Because when it's in the shed under the cattle, it doesn't really rot for the winter. So that's the biggest reason. As you can see there, some of it there, you can see the straw is almost gone, and that's only 3 months since that was put through the spreader, and that was very, very fresh when it came out of the shed. This is red clover Lee for silage. Red clover is very good for building up a bulk for producing silage. It produces an awful lot of nitrogen. As you can see, it produces an awful lot of plant itself. I have ryegrass sown along with it. It's the clover variety here is Merviot, and it's sown with Port Stewart ryegrass. Now in the first cut, the ryegrass will come up quite well and be mixed, but after that the clover takes over, and it's nearly pure clover you'll have in the silage. So it needs to be wilted. It's very difficult to get it to preserve if you bale it too fresh. To produce a crop is the same as on an organic farm as a conventional farm. Your N/P and K has to be correct, and your pH level has to be right. You have to have lime has to be right. And the easiest of the N/P and K to produce is nitrogen, because it's free if you have the right plant to produce it, in the clover or a legume, be it a pea or whatever. The P and K are more difficult. You have to bring in a form of P and K either through straw or rock phosphate or whatever. There are certain things that are permitted on an organic farm. But nitrogen, I do think, is a great waste of money, quite honest with you. I'm buying most of my cattle here, these Angus cattle, practically all of them, I'm buying them at the organic sales in Drumshanbo, which is the nearest sale to me. They have, I think, about 3 sales in the autumn and 3 sales in the springtime. We've always been getting quite a good premium As regards whether I'm making money and profit, I hope I am. It's a lot of the single farm payments is, I try and keep it anyway, and like a lot of farmers here in the west of Ireland, there's long winters and that, it's expensive housing cattle and that. But I would think I'm keeping a low cost system, and that's why I'm aiming to try and finish off grass and use as little inputs as possible, bar the straw and some corn that I'd get as well. There's no problem if you have to treat animals, you get permission from my organic organisation, which is IOFGA in my case, and they'll give me written permission. I take a dung sample from the cattle if I think I have dirty tails or whatever. I'll bring a sample to the lab in Sligo, and they'll test and tell me if I have a high worm count, and I get permission and I can dose. It's double the withdrawal period in an organic system. If you use medicine, you're not allowed to have routine dosing. So the idea is try and have clean pasture and try and prevent worm infestation building up. None of the fields will be 100% weed free, but we top regularly. Now, usually I get away with topping once, top it quite hard, and sometime maybe in June after the first round of grazing, top it down quite bare. And as you can see, this has only been topped once. And I keep it well controlled at grazing as well. I move the cattle round fairly often and graze it down fairly fast. So there's a certain amount of docks in that, but nothing to worry about too much. And that's the only way you can deal with them, is just to keep topping them organically. To summarise our rotation, it'll be permanently followed by a few years of tillage, and more than likely red clover lee, and back into tillage again, and then back into a permanent lee. It varies depending on the crops. The weather has a huge influence, especially on the timing of sowing. You have to decide how late it is, whether you're going to grow a cereal crop or an arable crop for silage. And in the autumn time, we like to try and grow winter grain here, but you need to get grain in early, and to get the weather is the problem. Then you definitely have a good crop for a combine, but it's not every year we get the opportunity. There's a good bit of extra bureaucracy involved with the organic farming. We have to have a licence through our organic body, and we have records to keep for them, and it involves an annual inspection and people coming and checking records and that, and lots to be done. But we're doing records anyway, so it's just another layer that has to be done, basically. And I don't find it too difficult, just something you have to make sure to sit down and do an hour or two every now and again, and that's basically it. What I notice, what has happened from the reps and the organic unit, Johnson Castle, getting involved, it has got the organic system up to another level, where it's becoming self-sufficient in the whole process, from the farmer to the factory to the shop. That there's a continual supply of food going through a system now, and it is getting to mainstream shelves in supermarkets rather than just to stalls and being sold at farm shops. It's getting up to a more sustainable level, I think.
Is organic farming more profitable? The straight answer is yes. Now, at a glance, I suppose, when you look back at it and look at your figures, you'll say maybe it's not or maybe it isn't. But your numbers are down, and some people think when numbers reduce that your profit goes down, but that is not always the case. In organic farming, your numbers are down, but your margins per animal are up. That is mainly due to the fact that you have far less inputs, or far less costly inputs in the line of fertiliser, or maybe huge veterinary bills where you have lots of cattle or lots of sheep, and maybe leading to lots more problems, health problems or disease problems within the herd of the flock. I have found since joining organic farming that health problems in the herd have disappeared almost, but at the same time my income has not dropped, in fact it has increased. Had I much to do to comply when I joined organic farming in converting my shed? The simple answer is no. I had to respace the cubicles. Other than that, that is all I had to do. For organic, you need a minimum of 3 square meters per cow. Now, I achieved that quite simply here by just removing 1 cubicle out of each row and respacing the cubicles. If your buildings are too tight and too enclosed, you're going to have much more problem with pneumonia or something like that. Whereas in organic, most of them would be straw bedded. They have more space and more air, and you don't have the problems. The cows go onto the mountain and onto the rough land for the summer months, and I cut the silage in while the fields are free. Now that also helps my rotation here, because the fields are grazed first of all by the cows, then they move on to rough land, which is low lying, onto the mountains, back down to the fields, And you know, it helps the rotation to keep moving, like, so there's at least a month, maybe 2 months in some cases before the land is grazed again. So the more natural, slow pace is what nature always intended, I suppose, really. You don't tend to get more build up immunity to more resistance to different diseases and sicknesses, so you don't have the same problems. Now I find few less cattle and getting better prices, but the inputs have gone way down. It's the cost. It's really, I suppose, the biggest difference is the costs have dropped, and that's what the margins are better, really. I've sown a lot of clover. I've done it 2 ways. I've undersown through oats, and I have also reseeded. Clover is very important because without, I suppose, up to just after the summer, really, the clover doesn't kick in, like you won't have that much grass. But once the clover gets going, the spots dense up and get much thicker and heavier. For the silage, you have to have the clover. I mean, otherwise that's the only source of nitrogen they would have. But I found out since I joined organic that with the type of grasses we're using and the clover in particular, that the higher protein content in the clover, that the cattle have been doing much better and the weanings are finishing much easier. Now the other thing I suppose you have to be careful of is when you let the cows in first, if they're not used to clover, that you have to let them in gradually and, you know, and ensure that they won't get bloat or anything. It's able to apply, I suppose, for the sheep, really. Sheep and clover are a bit more difficult in the sense that particularly with red clover, if the sheep eat clover when the rams are with them at the end of the year, it upsets the estrogen cycle and they just won't produce any lambs. That's one danger with the red clover, I suppose, that one has to be wary of it, but other than that, it's not a problem. One of the systems I've used in setting clover is or stitch it in after a cut of silage. Well, I find no problem with growing the oats. I'm not an expert on tillage, but oats seem to be the one which will cope best. We're not allowed any sprays or any chemicals in organic farming. So the fact that it's lighter, it grows thinner and there's much more light and air blowing through it. So you don't get the mildews or anything. You have to use a long straw variety, and that is to pass out the weeds so that it grows higher and passes the weeds. If you have a short straw there, you would have a fierce problem with weeds. You would overtake the straw and then stifle it. However, even with this light sowing, you can still easily achieve 2 tons to the acre. For the past 4 years, it had been a red clover mix, which was used solely for silage. In year 1, it will be just oats, which is this field. Next year, this will go back into oats and it will be undersown to grass. We roll the oats in a small roller and up in the shed and just use it as straight rolled oats to the weanings mainly, and for the sheep as well, of course. The biggest bit of satisfaction is the fact that last year, for the first time in my whole life, I have produced everything on the farm. I didn't have to buy in any concentrates, any feed. I didn't have a fertiliser bill. I had only just a very normal veterinary bill. Most of that was actually the testing. And you know, I still had a good income and my numbers of stock were down, which meant an easier lifestyle overall. And I suppose there's the self-sufficiency of being an organic farmer and trying to do it as well as I can and achieve it to some level of satisfaction definitely my level of satisfaction anyhow.
I'm Fintan Rice from Everard's Grange in Feather, County Tipperary, and I'm an organic farmer, and I have been organic for the last 12 years. We're a dairy farm. The farm is 100 acres of grassland and 75 acres of forestry. The conversion process takes 2 years, and really it takes another year, a year prior to that, of planning and looking at the various options and looking at working with clover and trying to do without nitrogen and P's and K's from a bag. So it takes, maybe it could even take 3 years, the process, but the actual conversion takes 2 years. With regard to fertility, I think that the basic rules of thumb that apply to conventional farming apply in organics, and that it's all down to good management and good breeding. This field of grass that we're standing here at the moment was never reseeded in the organic system in a conventional sense, but it was oversown with clover originally when we went in about 10 to 12 years ago. and the clover has been maintained in it over that 12 years, due mainly to good grassland management, I suppose. The fertility of the soil is being kept up by regular applications of dung and slurry, so that's where we get our P and K from, and our nitrogen obviously is coming from the white clover. We could start with a 60-day rotation in early spring, and that would be down to 25 in summertime, and extended back out towards 60 at the back end of the year, which will allows us to build up the grass and to get this kind of a sward in October. As we graze on, then each field or paddock is closed off as we graze it. We get our dung out in late October, and we get our slurry out before the deadline in whenever that is, end of September or mid-October, as it was the case this year. This is a crossbred herd. It's a mainly British Frisian base and New Zealand Frisian, and then we crossed on Swedish and Norwegian reds onto those. There's some Montbéliard in the herd as well. The reason we went down the crossbreeding route, it was for health and fertility, and to get a kind of a cow that would thrive in the type of conditions that we have out here, grazing down tight and being out in all weathers, and we're obviously health and fertility are crucial in the organic system. In terms of milk yield, the cows are milking 6,000 litres per annum, and we feel that's a pretty good yield, and it's sustainable going forward, and it leads to quite a profitable system. Stocked at 1.7 livestock units per hectare, it works out at over 10,000 litres per hectare. We're able to make a decent living from 70 cows on 100 acres. We contract rear out our heifers, so we just keep dairy stock on the farm. Organic milk this summer has made somewhere in the mid-30s compared to maybe 20 cent conventionally this year. And in winter time we will get somewhere in the mid-40s through the winter, which is needed because of the extra cost, meal feeding costs. If you're thinking of going organic, you must convert your herd, if you are a spring producer, to winter milk as well. A certain amount of winter milk is absolutely necessary in that the market dictates this. There is no market for a seasonal product. That means that you must either split your herd into spring and autumn calving or go all autumn calving, which is a big change for most people. So it was a big challenge for me personally to change to winter milk, and it was a change of focus, I felt, and the increased meal feeding and things like that were a thing I had to get my head around. Our silage is cut as surplus as it occurs over the grazing season. So I walk the farm regularly every week, and if I feel there's too much grass ahead of the cows, I take out a certain number of acres, and I would cut and bale that in maybe 2 weeks after it's taken out, and then that land is brought straight back into the grazing rotation. Some people might be worried that if you take that approach to silage making, where it's just simply a surplus, that you may not have enough. But really the key to the whole thing is stocking rate, and if you don't have silage in the yard and you don't have grass in the fields, well then your stocking rate is wrong, obviously. So it's either in the yard or out in the fields, and where we would like to have it is out in the fields. That's where we can make the money out of it, and that's where the cows are happiest grazing. If you were considering going into organic dairying, I would certainly suggest that you should look at as many organic farms as possible, talk to organic farmers, and maybe do a little bit of experimentation on farm yourself with clover, maybe not spreading nitrogen on certain paddocks, and try and get a feel for it yourself. For me, the advantages of organic farming are an improved lifestyle and a satisfaction in producing a product that there's a direct market for. We find it a sustainable system, it's environmentally friendly, and it provides us with a good income and a good lifestyle.
My name is Pádraig Fahey, and my wife's Una Ní Bhríoin, and we both run Beach Lawn Organic Farm in Ballinasloe, County Galway. We farm 14 acres. Off that we have 6 acres of field vegetables, half an acre of polytunnels. We've a hectare of a wildlife habitat under the Reps 4, and then the remainder we have in grass. When we started growing here Beach Lawn 8 years ago, we started on a very small scale, so in order for it to be successful you had to find markets for your outlets, and it's important to have direct outlets when you're doing small scale horticulture. We've a successful business here, and we're happy with the crop this year. We've got a very good return on it. We sell between 300 and 400 kilo of carrots a week. 70% of them we'd sell at €2 a kilo, and the remainder at $1.50 a kilo wholesale. Definitely by retail and selling direct yourself, you'd get 40 to 50% higher margin than carrots to be sold in the shop. There's a couple of key components for the base of our soil fertility here. We use clover and ryegrass when we put the ground into conversion. Then we use farmyard manure, which we source from other farms. We also get permission to bring stock in to graze the ground during the season when we've excess grass that we don't need. We make our own compost in the farm garden and we put that out in the land. And then we also use seaweed dust and liquid seaweed to provide nutrients to our crops during the growing season. The key components to having a successful organic vegetable business is getting your fertility right, having a balanced rotation on the farm, and have pest and disease and weed control programs in place. The net here in my hand it's an environmentally friendly way of protecting your carrot crop against carrot root fly. Organic farmers are not allowed to spray chemicals on their crops. Another method which is also useful is using garlic spray.
So we have 3 main ways we sell our vegetables. The home deliveries, which we do on a Tuesday. We've about 70 home deliveries at the moment. That's a family box of vegetables delivered to your door. We do wholesale just to supermarkets, and SuperValu is our main buyer at the moment. And then the third way is our markets. So we do farmers markets on Thursday, Friday and Saturday. We have 3 of them a week. Direct sales is really key to getting your premium, getting the price for your vegetables that you need to pay all your bills, to cover your costs. We're trying to be as diverse as possible, although it can be a bit confusing and complicated when you're selling through so many different outlets. Basically, we don't want to be dependent on any one outlet. I think the home deliveries has the most potential because people are getting value through getting a box delivered to their door. So it's a lot less hassle for them. I don't think we'd be viable if we weren't organic. The customer wants to buy the stuff, well, because it's local, but also because it's organic, and they're willing to pay the extra money for the organic local.
A key thing for establishing a market garden organically is to have polytunnels. So the polytunnels allow you to extend the season by 6 weeks either side, so you start sowing and planting the 2nd week of February, and you can continue cropping right through till the end of November. Why I got interested in organic was a big interest in environment and environmental issues. It was somewhere that I was able to put my energy into something that I liked, I was passionate about, and it was also something where the consumer and customers want to buy into, and they want to buy local produce, they want to buy vegetables that are grown naturally, and that's why we decided to do this. It's very rewarding, producing your own food, feeding your own family, and also feeding the community that you live in. Okay, we have here African marigolds, and by growing flowers in the polytunnel, you attract in beneficial insects, which will eat the green fly. I'm very confident, but the key, as I say, is research your markets before you take the jump into organic vegetable production. Speak with other existing organic growers, and get along to the Teagasc open day walks during the summer months.
My name is Richard Moran. I'm farming here at Farranconnell, which is just located outside of Mount Nugent in County Cavan. and we have a very much of an integrated farming system. We went organic about 5 years ago, and we farm pigs, poultry, beef, lamb, and we do about 100 acres of tillage as well. These are saddleback sows. I crossed the saddleback sow with the large white boar, and you can possibly see in the background there the bottoms traditionally seem to go more white than black and white, but every once in a while you'll get a black and white litter. The reason we use the saddlebacks is the saddleback is really a traditional outdoor breed. And if I was to have picked a large white or a landrace, their ability to survive in this sort of a system would be fairly marginal. Saddleback, very tough, very hardy. When you cross the saddleback with the large white boar, you're getting the best of both genetics, so to speak. You're getting the long, lean carcass of the large white, and you're getting that survivability so that when the animal does go outside, he's not set back and he can adjust to the outdoor climate, and they do thrive in this sort of a system. The large white sow, I don't think would be very happy out here. The saddleback, this is her turf. Litter size, if you do farrow outside, litter size, I have to say, is a problem because you will lose pigs. Before the sows come out here, farrowing would take place indoors. We have it's a very basic setup as far as farrowing is concerned. I would always separate a sow roughly 2 weeks before she's due to farrow so that she has a chance to sort of adjust herself to her new environment. We're standing here in what I would call a nursery paddock. It's a paddock that I bring the sows with their bottoms when they're about 4 to 5 weeks of age, and they can sort of adjust to the whole outdoor system here in relative safety, and safety being a big key to it, because if you bring them in any smaller, there is a problem with foxes. These are fatteners that will be 16 to 20 weeks old at the moment. Buying organic feed is very expensive, so we try and produce as much feed ourselves to feed to the livestock, whether it be silage, whole crop silage, or the grain from tillage. I sowed this paddock earlier in the spring with some oats, so they can eat the oats, they can graze on the oats, and it was really a bit of seed that I had left over from the previous year, and I sowed it straight in, and it took quite well. Pigs eat that. They also have access into the woods. The woods would be a big part of the feeding system for the pigs. They do forage in the woods. They get a lot of shelter during the day. If it starts to, in the winter time, if it gets very cold, they'll go into the woods. We also provide pig arks where they can go at night if they want proper shelter. We would slaughter possibly anything from 8 to 11 months, depending on the size of the pig. Live weight, we try and keep them in around the 75 to maybe 90 kilos on some of the bigger pigs. Carcass weight, anything from 50 to 70 kilos on the carcass weight. And it works quite well. We're getting about $4.25 a kilo at the moment for our pork, which is significantly higher than if we were doing conventional pork. Conventional pork is around $1.50 a kilo. So there's a substantial jump there. The market is very strong. If I was producing more pork, I know I could sell it. Just logistically, producing large numbers of pigs in this sort of a system is something that we would have to look very closely at if we wanted to get into maybe a higher volume of pigs on a per week basis. The one thing that I would say about this pork enterprise is that it gives me an income week in, week out. And unlike a lot of the other enterprises on the farm, you're waiting 8, 9, 10 months, maybe 2 years in the case of beef, to get a return from your investment. Every week I would sell 2 pigs, and if you're getting 225 to 250 euros a pig, when it hits that weight band, it's a 500 euro a week income. And it's become a very important part of my overall income on the farm. Just from a personal point of view, I would say that I'm very happy with the change that we made since we went organic, and I mentioned earlier that we've been 5 years at it now. It's afforded me a better income stream, I think, at this point. Now, the jury is still out whether we're going to make a lot of more money. I don't think there's not going to be a lot more money. There's certainly a better income, and it's more of a steady flow of an income stream. And I think that the market for this type of product is growing. Statistically, it's growing at about 11.5% per year, whereas conventional food is only growing at 2.5%, so that's a very positive note. If you went to look for organic pork tomorrow morning, if you were a restaurant owner or if you were a consumer and you wanted to find some organic pork, you'd discover that it's very difficult to come by the genuine article. Free-range pork, yes, there are quite a few people selling free-range pork, but this is certified, it's organic, it's the real deal, you know, and the logo on for the organic pork is, for the all organic, is good for nature, good for you, and it's such an easy sell.
My name is Jenny Young and I'm an organic farmer. I farm with my husband Peter and we farm 170 acres in Narramore, Athy, County Kildare. We have cows producing organic milk for Glenisк. We have a farm shop, and for the farm shop we produce hen eggs. We produce vegetables, beef and pork, and then also a little bit of cheese as well. We have 200 hens laying for us at any given time. They divide into 2 batches. The thing about our hens is, in some people's minds, it may be small scale, but we sell every one of those eggs direct to our customers through our farm shop and through an Honesty egg box at the front of our farmyard. In organics, you have 2 possibilities of getting hens. You either buy in organic hens that have their paperwork and they've been born and raised organic, or you will buy in day-old chicks. And I suppose for us, because we are doing so many different things, and I've just the shop and the vegetables, I just realised that raising day-old chicks is something that I really don't have time to do. So we're very lucky that we've met a very nice organic farmer who, alongside his own organic hens, he raises an extra batch for us, or extra 2 batches for us every year. We would feed them organic food. We also feed them a little bit of oyster grit to keep calcium levels up and to keep the shells hard, because when hens get to a certain age, the egg shells get a little bit more brittle. We're paying 500 to 550 euros a tonne for organic feed, and the last I looked at it was about 80% more expensive. You're always going to pay more for organic, and that's, I suppose, that's why the customer has to pay more as well, because there is an added cost. You can't give organic hens household scraps unless they're organic, so you have to be very careful about your potato peelings. Are your spuds organic or not? We sell all our eggs direct, so we would box them. We would make sure there's a certain amount of information on the box. So we would have the license number, we'd have our IOSCA symbol and our address, so that the people know exactly whose farm these eggs came from, and also the best before date. I started off buying boxes from, actually it was one of the Monaghan poultry farmers, and he used to deliver eggs down to a supermarket, and he used to sell me an extra few hundred boxes at a time. But I suppose since we have increased in size, what I do is once a year is I buy a couple of pallets of egg boxes. Everything has to be factored in organic production, from your oyster grit to your egg boxes to the time you take in collecting the eggs every day. I suppose sometimes farmers don't take into account the labour involved, and it does take an hour every day to collect eggs and to box them. It takes another hour a week to clean out the hen house, and it does take time in selling the eggs, so you have to factor in your labour before you make any big decisions. Each of our hen houses are built on old railway sleepers, and once a year we will move the hen house fully, like move it maybe a couple of metres, and then underneath we'll have a lot of well-rotted hen manure which we compost down and use for our vegetables. We will also move the temporary paddock. About every 2 months we move it, so the hens always have access to clean pasture. Each of our houses will allow 120 hens to live there comfortably, and then outside the hens have as much really room to roam as they want. They get as much sunlight as possible, so they are let out about 8 o'clock in the morning, and then as soon as darkness hits we would close the hens in. But they're out full time, and we use an electric poultry fence to keep the hens in, and that is powered by, we have a windmill that powers that fence, and it I suppose it keeps the hens in and the foxes out. I find poultry is working for us. I suppose the important thing is that we went into organics, and it was primarily for economic reasons, but since we've become involved in organics, we really have got to believe more and more in what we're doing. And I suppose for us I suppose we love food, and we love things to be as natural and tasty as possible. And I think that, as me in particular, I really do believe in the system, and it's educated me an awful lot. There's often a lot of ways to get rid of that weed. It's not just spraying, so it makes you think outside the box a little bit more.